Well, welcome back to the Recycled Cottage and Garden. I have a plethora of potatoes to can. I'm just going to do a small amount right now to show you how you can potatoes, and these do need to be pressure canned because they are low acid food. You can't just water bath them. It's not safe. Bacteria can grow way too easily, and especially since potatoes are a root crop, there could be bacteria, probably is bacteria of all kinds in the soils. So to save a little time, what I did do, let me do this carefully. Let me do this. There we go. I have already peeled and cut my potatoes, and they are just soaking in some salt water. Just a little bit of salt, and then I add the water. And then the potatoes, as I cut them, go in here. These are kind of what I would call a small to medium chunk. Mostly I use potatoes, canned potatoes, in soups and stews. Because bear in mind, they will already be cooked by the time you're done canning them. So it's going to be the last thing you add to a soup or a stew if you're having to boil something ahead of time. These are the canned potatoes are the last things you want to add in because they're already cooked. They'll just go to mush if you boil them for a couple of hours. Or even if you put them in a crock pot. Add them last because they're already cooked. They'll already be soft. The other thing that I use these for is if I'm making fried potatoes and onions. It's a nice side dish if you've never done it before. You can do it with a raw potato. Just dice them small or slice them small, and just fry them in a little butter or a little oil, whatever you prefer, and slice it. I usually do the onions first. I'll chop up the onions whatever size I want them. I tend to like them a little smaller. I don't want huge hunks in mine. And then get your onions pretty much cooked to where they're starting to become clear. And then, chop in some potatoes. You may not, unless you have a big family, you may not want a whole pint of potatoes in there. Although that's a good amount for like two servings. So you could do it that way. And if you're doing that, you want to drain, and then I like to rinse the whatever vegetable I'm using. I don't know why. A lot of people just add it in. I like to rinse them. I don't want a lot of extra, salty flavor or something like that in there. That's just me. It's not necessary. But if you're going to do fried potatoes, you definitely want to drain them, if nothing else. Okay? Now, in the first step and I've got some things pulled out, pretty much ready, set to go here. But it's going to take a few minutes because I got to wait for some water to heat. With potatoes, you want to hot pack them. That means the potatoes need to be hot before you put them in your jars, and then you have to have hot water to pour over them. I'm at a little bit of a limitation here because I don't have lots of pots to do a big batch at once. So I'm just, I can get 9 jars in my canner if they're pints, and the small pints, not the wide mouth. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I did go ahead and get these peeled and cut, and they've just been soaking for a little bit here to, keep them fresh and not dehydrating and doing weird things while I'm waiting for pots to boil on the stove. Now, I have 3 pots that I've got out right now. I need to pull out one more and put water in that one as well, because once you put your potatoes in the jars, you have to pour hot water over them. It doesn't have to be boiling, but you do want hot water over them before you put them in the canner, because everything's going to be hot. Okay? Now, in order to show you what's going on over at the stove, it's going to look a little shaky because I can't edit this stuff out yet. I'm going to move the stand with the computer, the Chromebook over to the stove, and I'm going to have to lift it up and show you what I'm doing, and so that you'll know what I'm doing and how. And we'll talk a little bit about whys as we go there. So bear with me while I move this stand over, which is actually an antique plant stand, but it works pretty well. Oops, that's okay. I think we're okay. Let me check that. I moved that so it wouldn't do that. Yeah, it worked fine. And it did it anyway. Okay. All right. Let me move a plug. I have to keep this thing plugged in, or I may not have enough power to do what I need to do. There we go. That'll work. I'll just go underneath it. Let's hope the phone survived it. I think it just slid. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, move that out of the way. Now, so on my stovetop, I have my canner. I have a pot of water that the raw potatoes are going to go in to blanch for about 5 minutes. Anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes is good. I'm going to do 5. This small one has water in it and nothing but water. That will get heated up in a minute, and when I'm ready to get closer to put the lids on. Okay, so while that water is still getting warm, let me show you this canner. That's the empty canner, and this lid, or it's not a lid, it's I don't know what you call these things. Anyway, it goes in there and sits on the bottom to keep the jars off the bottom. If you're going to pressure can, you definitely have to have one of those. I wouldn't want to try it with just a towel down there like you would for a water bath. It's too much pressure. It's you just don't want to. So what I do first, regular plain white vinegar, cheapo peepo, and you just pour a couple of glugs in there. The reason for the vinegar is to keep the sediments in your water. If you ever have little floaties in your water, or something sits with water in it too long and you get a little bit of that white lime scale around it, that's what we're trying to avoid here. It will keep your canner clean. It will keep your jars clean. You won't have to scrub on them. Okay? So that's that part. And then we add water to about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Once you get your jars in, you can see if you need to add more. I think I might add just a touch more. Okay. Let's put some more water in there just in case I will need it. Okay. This one's about to be boiling. So bear with me while I'm going to unplug it for a moment. While I get the potatoes over there and put them in the boiling water. So right now what I'm doing is just dumping off the water that they're sitting in, which is room temperature. Yep, there we go. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm just pouring off the water that they've been sitting in, which is room temperature. A little bit on the chill side, but room temperature nonetheless. Okay, just to make it a little easier on me, I think I'm going to do it with this. And the water is hot and it's starting to boil. So I'm just putting in plain water. Plain water. When I get them in here, and we're going to time it for about 5 minutes or so, and if we take longer, that's fine. I don't like to cook potatoes. I don't like to blanch them for a long period of time, because in the pressure canner you're actually cooking them. And at a high elevation, they're in for 15 pounds of pressure, Whereas if you're under 1,000 feet, it's only 10 pounds pressure. But double check your elevation. And for a high elevation, you have to add 15 more minutes to your processing time. And this is just a variety of potatoes. Some are kind of yellowy, some are more white. These were ones that I got on sale. And there's 2 different kinds in here. It doesn't really matter. The potatoes don't care. Oh yeah, this is good. This is perfect. Okay. There we go. Now I get to rinse this out. Be right back with you in a second. You rinse this stuff off. Okay. Now, the other thing that I have done, let me take you over here and keep you out of the steam. I've got the potatoes in there. We're going to let them sit in there. The water was boiling. It's cooled off a little bit. We'll wait till it starts boiling a little bit again, and then we'll start timing it. This one is where the lids are going to go to warm up. I've not turned that on yet. This is the inside of the canner. And it's just the vinegar and the water at the moment. Have not turned that on yet either. Okay, in the sink, I have my big strainer. The potatoes, when they're blanched, have to come out and go into a strainer, and you strain all that water off. Not sure why. That's just the way they say to do it. So I'm following the way to do it. And then I will have to heat up more water to put in the jars with the potatoes. And that should not be a huge problem. I am working at a little bit of a disadvantage. This side over here, the garbage disposal has decided to leak like a sieve. It's like whatever water you pour in there comes straight out the bottom into the cupboard below. So I'm not using that side. So I have the dishpan in there to keep that from happening. A minimal amount of water is fine. The newspaper I got down there will soak it up. But I don't know when we'll be getting that fixed. Probably about a week or so. We'll see. Okay. So I'm going to put you back over here so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm sorry I can't raise this up any higher. I do have a tripod. However, the tripod does not work with a laptop Chromebook. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put the canner on about a medium heat because it can start getting warm. It doesn't have to be boiling. The other thing we have, I have a small bowl. And that has vinegar in it. We'll show you what we do with that when we get there. There you go. And keep an eye on things over there. And I'm going to move my jars over there where I can get to them easy. And everything is clean. My hands are clean. That can just kind of sit loosely on top. It's fine. And I have 9 jars ready to go. Nice and clean. Okay. And let's see. Don't have my water on yet, but we might as well go ahead and get our lids in here. And this just has water in it, nothing else. These are Golden Harvest regular lids. 12 comes in. I'm sorry, I'm getting a glare. 12 comes in a box. I have exactly 9 left in that box. And what you want to do is split them apart because they'll kind of stick to each other. They nest in each other. And this is the rubber ring that will actually seal your jar. These are not marked on the top of them, which is kind of nice. You have lots more room to write. So I just put them in one at a time, kind of spacing out where I drop them in. That keeps them from sticking together. Whoops, sorry. I'm so sorry. Keeps them from sticking together in a clump like this. You don't want it to do that. That's not fun. To try and get them to part when they're hot. Okay. So those are in there. Let me show you what that looks like. I think you can see. Oops, there we go. This is really hard with this laptop, but I'm doing the best I can. So bear with me. You can see our potatoes over there are getting a little bit of foam on top. That means they're getting hot. I'm going to start timing them. And I had to buy a new timer. I just use one of these. I'm kind of old school about it. We'll do about 6-7 minutes. I had to buy a new one of these yesterday. My other one, I had it sitting on the back ledge of the stove. And when I opened this and did some stuff, and when the door closed, it rattled it enough. This fell off into a pot of beans. That was not fun. And of course, it was beans that had bacon in them for flavoring. And this is not totally sealed. In the back, there's a crack here. And there was no way I could get it open to actually clean anything. So I just had to buy another one. So anyway, there's our timer. And we won't need this. This little box can go in the recycling. They're real big on recycling here, which is nice. It amazes me how much. I have one of those reusable grocery bags, and they're quite large. In a week's time, it's at least half full, if not more. And 99% of what's in there is plastics. Plastic jars, plastic lids that I don't want to reuse or can't. I will tell you this. If you buy small jars of peanut butter, these are the small 16-ounce jars. If you buy that, these lids fit perfectly on a narrow mouth canning jar. So save them if you want to use canning jars to store dry goods. Cheaper than buying them if you're already eating the peanut butter. And, check out other lids that you may have. They may fit also. I found some plastic mayonnaise jar lids will fit. Some won't, some will. Depends how the jar was made. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn that can go down. Okay, I'm turning down the heat on the potatoes, and we're going with a medium heat for the moment on the lids. This is on a medium heat. I think I'm going to go ahead and turn it up because we're really close here. Just leave that on it. This takes forever to heat up. I don't know why. But it's the one I use all the time because it's in the front and I'm not having to reach over. Oh, I got something. Must be a little oil or grease or something on that. Okay, never mind. Ignore the smoke. It'll go away. It'll go away. Okay. So we're about 4 minutes out from the potatoes being ready to be dumped in the colander. And then I need to rinse that pot out and put more water in it and bring it up to be hot at least. Doesn't have to be boiling, but it does need to be hot. So right now I'm going to move you back over to the table where I can sit down for a minute. I have sciatica issues and I cannot stand for very long periods of time. I do a lot of work right here at the table rather than standing at the counter. And I don't have a lot of counter space anyway. So I put a towel down, make sure it doesn't mess up my wooden table. Now, why is that going off already? That's a little early. I don't know, it's having strange things going on. It's new. It's not broken yet. Anyway, yeah, that's the new timer. It's not broken yet. First time I've used it. It'll be all right. When I hear it stop ticking, I'll know it's time. Anyway, it's a beautiful day today in Colorado. I think the high is supposed to be 36 degrees today, I think. Yesterday was like 41, which is weird, seeing how we've had negative degrees at night. We've not had any more snow, so we get a little bit of snow melt, but not a whole lot. What is nice is that most of it has melted off of the parking lots and streets. They do plow the streets. Only if the ice gets bad do they put out like gravelly stuff on top of it so that there's some grit for your tires to grip onto. I do have decent all-weather tires. However, they're not snow tires. I could only afford one set of new tires, and so I went with all-weather. So other than going to places here around town, I don't go anywhere in the winter. And we have a long winter. Usually it starts in December, which it did. And most of the snow falls January, February, sometimes March. A friend of mine told me that the first year that she moved here, she was 4.5 at the time, it snowed on the 4th of July. That's what living in the mountains is like. You just never know. I have not experienced real deep snows here. We have about, well, since some of the melting has taken place, we've got about 6 inches on the ground that has stayed. And not sure when we'll get more. They keep saying, well, we might have some snow showers, but it's not going to add enough to, fill a teacup. So it's just kind of weird. It's definitely different. It's definitely different than the snow I grew up with in Michigan. It either snowed or it didn't. And when you got snow, you got enough to know you had snow and you could go out and make snowman. Sometimes it might be a small one, and I only remember one Christmas where it didn't snow. The yard was just muddy. And I was very small then. Anyway, what else was I going to say while I'm waiting? Let's see. Well, I guess that thought went away, didn't it? It's heck to get old sometimes, but I think I had this problem when I was younger. Anyway, 28 miles up the road, and I mean up, on Crested Butte, is in the mountain, on the mountain, only 28 miles away, but it's, you go out and you're going up in elevation the whole time period. And they are at nearly 1,100 feet, I think, or might be 10,000, or let's see. We're at 7,700. They're either at 10,000 or 10,000 or 11,000, I forget. Somewhere in that range. So they're quite a bit higher than we are here. And when we got a little bit of snow, like an inch, they got dumped with feet. And I think, I'm not sure what the measurement is at this moment, but the last I heard, it was about 6-7 feet. So they've been really working to keep their streets clean up there. But all the skiers are happy, and so are the resort owners. Okay, this is done. So hang on. Let me carry you over here. I am going to put this over here. I'm sorry for the shakiness. This is just the only way I've got to do this. Okay, this is my colander. And let me turn that one off. hot water with potatoes. And we're just going to dump it in there. Because this is the side of the sink that doesn't leak. And the potatoes are still mostly hard because they're just blanched. They're not cooked. Okay, I'm rinsing this with hot water to get the extra starch out. Potatoes are very starchy. You probably know this. So I'm going to refill this pot, so bear with me a moment with the noise. I've got to have enough water to dip it out and pour into jars. So let me get it filled. We're about a third of the way up. I want to put at least half in here. And I'm filling it with hot water so it'll heat up that much faster. Okay, that'll work. There we go. Let me put it back on the stove and turn the eye back on. And we're going to put that medium high. Okay, the lids are hot water now, so I'm going to turn them down to low just to keep them warm. They say we don't have to heat them up a whole lot anymore, but I don't trust that. I do it old school. It won't hurt to do that. Okay, now I'm going to move you again. Bear with me. And we're going to go, let me move that out of the way. Don't want this wet. Lord, no. Okay. Here's our jars. And have a cup here. Got a measuring cup out because this is just easier for me. That should be good. And I've just filled it with regular table salt. Well, I haven't filled it, but okay, this is just regular table salt. And I'm going to do just a little bit. I don't know, can you see that? Let me try something here. I don't know if that helps at all. Okay, anyway, very small amount, like a half a teaspoon or less in each jar. That does tend to help with most of your vegetables. If you can't do salt, don't put it in. They'll tan just fine. I find it does help with the flavor, but I'm very tolerant of, oops, too much. Whoop, I stuck two things in one. That's not good. I can tolerate salt just fine. Okay. Let me put the rest of this in here, get it out of the way because I'm going to use that for water, and we'll just put it up there. Okay, now, our jars are ready with the salt. My rings are over here. The lids are hot. And I can hear it. The water's heating up in the canner. I took the lid off the canner. Hopefully I can show you this. I'm hoping this works. It's kind of a bit of a thing here. Okay. I'm going to need this and my funnel. My favoriteest funnel in the whole world. Here. There we go. All right. My funnel, and you just push in the middle and it pops out the back. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way for right now. That too. I don't have much counter space, I'm telling you. It's a challenge some days. Okay, that water's heating up. So we're good to go there. Okay. I'm going to go ahead, get my potatoes over here where I can deal with them. Okay, there we go. All right, now you put your potatoes in. This may only take 8 jars, I'm not real sure. I just cut up a bunch of potatoes. Yeah, and they're still hard for the most part. Oops, lost a tiny one. Okay, I'm going to use a few more. I do not like to load the jars up all the way to the top. And by the top, I mean right here. Can you see that? Right here where this edge of his, you want to stop there with your liquid and everything. So I usually do a little bit less potato because the potato, they tend to float up. That's been my experience. So I'd rather do, a few pieces less of potato in there than have them float up above the water. And sometimes they'll do that, and then they'll turn kind of blackish looking on the top. There's nothing wrong with them. They just look ugly. I don't usually eat those. I'll take them off. I'll just take them out of the jar before I dump the jar and use it after they're canned. But sometimes I get that. I actually think it's probably a reaction with the minerals in the water. I have not canned potatoes here in Colorado, so this is a first for here. Probably got too many potatoes, I don't know. We'll see. Well, that one just wants to fall off, doesn't it? Okay. We're just going for it. Looks like about three-ish spoonfuls do it. And I can adjust the level of the potatoes once I get them in here. A lot of people like to do these in quarts, especially if they have a big family. They like to do potato casseroles and stuff. That's fine. Again, for me, there's just me. And if I make soups and stuff, that's going to have other vegetables added in. Usually meat and broth, because I don't like just plain. I'm not vegetarian. Some people are. That's great. If that works for you, go for it. And as you can tell, I have 2 different colors of potatoes. Some were yellow russets, some were white russets. I guess they're called golden russets or something, the yellow ones. But they're actually yellow inside. I'd only be doing 8 jars. That's okay. That's okay. This was a 5-pound bag plus a few extras I had in the refrigerator. And technically, we should only get 5 jars because the saying goes, a pint's a pound the world around. But when you cube them up smaller, you can stick more in there. I don't like to pack them real full, as I explained. Oops, it's okay. A little too much there. I can go that one. Okay. I've only got a couple little pieces. I'll save that for another batch. Okay, that can go over there out of the way. And pick this ring up one more time. And the potatoes that fell, we'll throw those in the trash over here. Just make 2 little tiny pieces. I'm not worried about them. Okay, now, next thing we have to do. And so we're only going to be doing 8 jars. We'll just put that one to the side and save it for my next batch. So, I'm going to take water out of the water pot over there, just clear water. And we're going to slowly pour that hot water in there. And up to that ridge line at the neck. That gives you your 1-inch head space, which is what you want. And you just fill them up one at a time. And I go a little bit slower than some people. Some people go pretty fast. I do everything a little slower than most people. I don't have to rush anymore. I don't have to get up early. I don't have to rush off to a job. Rush home to feed the cat. Or go get dinner. Or fix dinner, whichever I choose. At this point, my lifestyle is totally different than it used to be. I always seem to be in a hurry to get somewhere. Part of living in a city, I guess. I don't do that anymore. There, you can probably see the water going in. Hopefully it's not glaring too much. You can see where the water's going in. Okay, we're almost to the next step here. Perfect. Okay, next step is we want to debubble. What is that? Okay, I kind of went over it a little bit. I have my handy dandy little plastic knife, which is just the right size, and I did finally find my actual debubbler, but it's like yay long for doing quartz. So what you want to do is just stick it down like in the side and down in the middle of each jar and just move it around just a little bit. And what you're doing is you're moving the vegetable or fruit or whatever it is you're doing, moving it around to get the air out of the little pockets between the chunks of food. If you don't do that, your jar may not seal. It may break because there's air trapped in there that needs to be getting out. When it goes through the canning process, what you're doing is you're getting rid of the air. It's a sealed, when the canner is closed, it's a sealed process because it needs that pressure, so all the air has to come out. So, oops, I may need to add a little more water to some of these. That happens when you get the air out. Sometimes you have to add a little more water. And you'll notice that my jars are different sizes, different shapes a little bit. That's because most of them are ball or cur jars, which are very standardized. Some of these will be jars that food you buy at the store came in. If the rings on here, if these metal rings fit these perfectly, you can use those. I've not had any problems. Some people say only use them for water bath. I've not had any problems. Okay, we're going to bring down our vinegar once again. Do I have a cloth in here? Yes, I do. Good. This is just straight vinegar and a clean cloth. You can use a paper towel if you like. If I'm doing something that's greasy, like some meat products, I will definitely use a paper towel. For this, just one of these is fine. What we're doing is we're going over the rim of the jar and making sure we have nothing on that rim, that it is perfectly clean. Does not have to be dry, but it does have to be perfectly clean. So you just go over the rim. And be careful, these jars are now hot because they've got boiling water in them. Okay, and we'll get to the next portion here in just a second. Let me put that out of the way. Let me turn that off and this off. Okay. Now we've got our lids, which are hot. This is your jar, your lid lifter. Has a magnet in the end. These are priceless. It saves you from burning your fingers. So what I do, if all my jars are ready, I put all of these on first. Because remember, I only have a 16 quart canner. It's only going to hold tops 9 jars. For right now, we only have 8 jars because I didn't have enough potatoes chopped. Trust me, I have more. I have 2 more 10-pound bags in the pantry that all need to get canned at some point. Okay, let that sit over there. Now you take your ring and you put it on fingertip tight. Only as tight as your fingertips, like this, will tighten it. Don't crank it down. Whatever air is left in there needs to escape. Okay? And then one at a time, you put them in your canner. And the water is boiling in there, so I know it's good and hot. And amazingly enough, you don't need more than a few inches of water. Oops, there's another potato. Put him back over there. We'll put him in the next batch. Is that on there right? Yeah, okay. If you're using wide mouth jars in a 16 quart canner, you will only be able to get 8 in there. It'll all be tight fitting, but you'll only be able to get 8 in there. And I'll show you this in just a moment. Hopefully the steam won't be too bad. I'm leaving a little extra space between them. I'm actually getting 9 in here because I can put one in the middle. Okay, let me see if I can show you. Turn that light on. Okay. And there we are. They're in the canner. Their water is about 2 inches up the side of the jar, inch to inch and a half, because it's got another ½ inch or so below it. If you don't think you have enough water, get really hot water before you add any. I have hot water sitting over here from filling, so I can actually just pour in another cup of water. And that's fine. You don't want to go more than 2 inches above your bottom of your jars usually. These do not have to process for as long as most. So now that we have, I'm going to turn the heat up because it has to come to that full rolling boil. So you put your lid on and you slide it to where it's locked. It is loose right now. Okay? What we're going to be doing at this point, it's a waiting game. I've got the heat turned up, so it should start coming up to temperature here pretty quick. And I'll take that one back out. In the next section in what we do is, sorry, I have trouble talking when I'm doing other things. What we want next to see is this little, bring you over here. This little thing will pop up. This will start venting out steam. Once you have a good solid steam coming out of this vent, and you'll be able to see it. It may not show up on the camera here, but it will be a good solid steady stream of steam. When you have that, then We have one more step to go. Hang on just a second. Let me get my book. I should have put it on the table, and I didn't. Okay. Once that steam comes out, a good steady stream, we time it for 10 minutes. You have to wait 10 minutes and let it vent. Don't try and put the jiggler on sooner. You can let it go a little longer if you have to, but you don't need to. 10 minutes is the norm. The reason for that is that it's pushing, all that steam is pushing the air out of the canner. And that's what you want, because you want a good tight seal on that canning lid. It does have its rubber ring in it. I probably didn't show you that, I'm sorry. But yes, you have to have the rubber ring on it. And once it's done with that, with the venting for 10 minutes, then you can put your jiggler or weight or whatever you've got on. And if you have one with a dial gauge, you'll see, follow your directions on that. Always keep your directions for canners, always. Now, what my ball book says, and my Jackie Clay book says for potatoes, white potatoes have to be hot packed, hot food in the jar with hot water poured over it before it goes in the canner. For 1,000 feet and below, once your temperature is up and you have your jiggler on and you get a steady rocking motion that's just every about once a minute or so, you'll get that rocking motion, the jiggle to it. You can hear it, you can see it. Once you reach that stage, and that takes a few minutes, you're going to process it in that canner for 35 minutes if you're under 1,000 feet. If you're over 1,000 feet, you have to add 15 more minutes to it. Okay? So I have to go for 50 minutes. So those potatoes are going to cook here for over an hour, or almost an hour. Sorry about that. Almost an hour. I've seen people do the pints and quarts. And quarts are 40 minutes for 1,000 feet and below. Be 55 minutes for over 1,000 feet. Okay? So, or at least where mine is. Double check your ball book. Double check. I don't even know. Yeah, this one has it. Yeah, it does. Okay. Let me rephrase this, because I should have said. Boiling water bath is an increase in processing time, but your weight goes up. Anything over 1,000 feet is 15 pounds. But I did read online to also add 15 minutes as well. Now this book is older. It's only showing increased processing time so many minutes depending on your altitude. Okay, hang on. You can see what she's doing over here. You see that thing has popped up? It had a bit of a rattle to it. It has now popped up. Okay. There is steam coming out. And we are going to start timing it in just a minute. It's not a steady stream yet. It's still a little wishy-washy. So we'll time it in just a moment. I don't know if you can see the steam coming out of that. I don't know that that's... Can you see that? There you go. Okay, we're almost there, but you see it's not a completely steady stream. It has to be a steady stream. We're almost there. I'll take you back over there in a second when it's there. So, as far as your processing times for higher altitudes, double check with the newest canning books. The Ball site also has information, so you can get it there as well, and that will be the most up to date. I did check mine, and I'm okay for where I'm at. And of course, it all just depends what you're making as to how long and how much pressure. You can use higher pressure. It won't hurt it as far as I know, but why process it that much longer if it's not needed? Okay, I can hear it. Let me take you back over here. Let me see if you can hear it. I'm not sure you can. I'm getting a steady stream now, and I can hear the steam coming out. Okay, so I'm going to time it for 10 minutes. Let's see if we can get our timer to work properly here. Our new timer. Okay. And then what I'm going to show you next after we get the time on this for the steam to come out and put the jiggler on is so you can hear and see what the jiggler does, what it sounds like. And then I'm probably going to shut this video down, and then I will have to do a second one, a part 2, whenever the canning part is done and the pot cools off. And I can explain all that to you, and I'll do that in that second video, because by the time I start doing the video, I'm not going to have you stare at a pot for 30 minutes or more waiting for it to cool down. That's kind of boring, and I'm sure you don't want to listen to me yak. So we're going to do a 2-part video, wherein the second part I will show you how you make sure that your canner's done, it's cooled off. You don't move your canner, you don't remove the jiggler, you don't do anything with it until it cools down by itself. That's part of the canning process, not just the heating up and expelling the extra air in there for the 10 minutes, but letting it slowly cool down. Your canning, the sealing of the jars, starts happening at that point. Now, when the canner is cool and that valve drops, then you can take the jiggler off, then you can open your canner and take your jars out. They may still be boiling inside. That's perfectly normal. They're supposed to. You set them out on I use a folded towel. You want something soft. You want to keep it out of drafts. Do not have a fan blowing directly on it. If you're hot, have a fan somewhere else that you can walk in front of for a few minutes and then come back. I understand that. I used to can in an apartment in Texas, right near Houston. I had no air conditioning, and when I was canning in the summertime, temperature in that kitchen would get very, very hot. What I did was I put a fan in each of the kitchen windows blowing out. It was sucking hot air out. And then I would just step out into the hallway, which was cooler, to cool off. So that's something you can do depending on your situation. A lot of people live with air conditioning. You can just turn your air conditioner on. You just don't want anything blowing directly on your jars while they're cooling. Okay? And it shouldn't take too long before those jars start sealing. And what you'll hear is that little pop, ping kind of sound. That's the lid sucking down. And you don't mess with them. You just leave them alone. You leave the rings on them. You leave them alone. You Once you take them out and you set them wherever you're going to set them on the towel, you're going to leave them set there for 12 to 24 hours. What's happening during that time period is very, very critical. That's when those lids are totally sealing down to the glass jar. That rubber type of stuff, whatever it is, I'm not sure what they make it out of these days. I have a feeling there's probably some silicone in there. That seals down to the jar. So you have to keep the pressure on it with that ring, which may become a little loose. Sometimes they get a little stuck, and I'll show you what to do with that, because we'll probably have a part 3. Because part 2 is going to happen today for as far as filming goes, and then a part 3 will have to be the next day when I show you what to do with your jars after everything's cooled. So, okay, we're up to 56 minutes. I'm hoping we're not going to have a problem with this video. This is a long time to go, but it's got to vent for 10 minutes. And then we want to see what the jiggler does, and then I can stop it. I haven't had time. A lot of weird stuff happening, and Brenda and I have been put together a 12th night of Christmas party here at the apartment complex, and it was a lot of work, and I didn't have as much help as I thought we would have. Most people just want to show up with their dish to pass, and that's it. But there's a lot more to it. And if you've ever thrown a party, you know that. I may not sign up for it next year. I may be one of those that just brings my dish and says, here we go. Anyway, we had a good time. I think everybody that came had a good time. We had some people who didn't come. They just don't like parties. And honestly, it's mostly women in this building. And there's only a handful of men, and they just don't like hanging out with all these old ladies. So, anyway, okay, we got about 5 minutes to go. You can probably hear it in the background spewing a little bit of what sounds like it's spewing water. That's part of the steam, but that's also the air coming out. It's pushing as much air out of that as it can. Now, there's still some left in there, obviously, but that will, more and more will get pushed out through the canning process. That's why that, the weight, I guess, is what they call it. That's why it jiggles, because the steam pushes up through that vent and hits the inside of that weight, and it jiggles, and you can hear it doing that. So here's the other thing, and I've mentioned it before, I will mention it again. Do not leave out of sight or out of hearing of your canner. You want it, even if you have a gauge on it, you have to be vigilant and watch that gauge. I did have one for a short period of time. I didn't really like it, but I used it. You have to make sure your pressure does not go too high or too low. And everyone's stovetop is different. This one, I know about where to put it now. I've got just enough experience with it to know what number on the dial to put the temperature on it, on the stove itself. Like I said, that the eye that I use all the time, it's older, it's getting a little worn, still works, and they won't replace anything unless it's like totally broken, doesn't work at all. So hopefully nothing will go kablooey when I'm in the middle of canning something, because that would not be fun. Anyway, I know where to put mine. The first time you do this, you may have to play with it a little and just make a note and stick it in your canning book or in something so that you know and will remember, okay, once it reaches that perfect jiggle, what number on my dial or temperature on my dial do I need to probably put it on. Water bath canning's it's a no-brainer. You don't have a dial. You don't have a weight. You don't have, it's just boiling water. So you just want to keep your water boiling. A steady boil doesn't have to be a rolling, humongous boil that boils out, but you do want to keep the boil going. So yes, water bath canning is a lot simpler. A lot of this is waiting for it to vent, waiting for it to heat up enough once you put the weight on it for it to reach that proper jiggle. And I would rather it jiggle a little more than not enough, but you want to try and find that sweet spot, because as it jiggles, more steam will come out of there. When the steam comes out of it, it's your water level can go down in your canner. You do not want it to go dry. Now this is a short canning for a lot of things, especially if you're in lower altitudes. So I just want to get it to the point where I can show you and let you listen to the jiggle, so you know what it sounds like, what it looks like, just so you have a reference point. It may do a little, depending on what kind of weight you have, it's going to look and sound a little bit different than mine. There are a number of different weights and such out there. I couldn't find my old 15-pound weight ring to put on my old weight, so I just ordered a brand new one, and verified that at the Presto site that it did work with this model number of canner, and it does beautifully. So you can get replacement parts very easily. They're very inexpensive, really. But generally what comes with your canner should last you for years, including your rubber ring. And okay, we are there at 10 minutes. If things not dinging, I'm going to have to do something about that. Okay. Let me set you down over here. And here's my weight. Watch your hand. Oh, there it goes. Watch your hands when you're putting your weight on. I can see in the video that steam's still coming. So you want to kind of go in from the side and drop it on. Okay. That help? Not really. Try and get a Well, I guess I'm not going to. I was trying to get it to where it would. There, it's somewhat. Okay. That'll help. I'll bring you a little closer. Right now, you're not going to hear anything. No steam coming out. It's not jiggling. There you can see a little bit. I don't know that the camera will pick it up. There is a little bit of steam underneath. There you go. You can see a little bit of steam coming out from underneath there. That's normal. I'm just going to go ahead and sit you on the table here for now. That's normal. And we'll just sit here and chat for a minute. Maybe I should have tried to do a live stream so we could have chatted in between, but then I would have had trouble being able to see a chat. So that's probably not going to work with Chromebook. I don't have another option. And I don't use internet on my phone because it's not in my budget. So anyway, oh, there we go. My head's not chopped off. Anyway, and yes, canning does kind of take over your entire kitchen. You have things sitting everywhere. But once you get your jars out, or while they're in the canner, because this is going to be 50 minutes. Let's see. 50 minutes. You know, that's enough time to do up whatever dishes you have to do, get things put away that you don't need, get things cleaned that need to be cleaned. And all you need is a padded spot for them to sit when you take them out of the canner. Like I say, I just use a folded towel. And the one I'm using, because there's only 8 jars in there, the folded kitchen towel is plenty fine. You do not want one of those real thin, just cotton tea towels. You want like a terry cloth towel. You want some cushion underneath it. That's going to help absorb the heat so you don't mess up your countertop in any way or whatever you're sitting them on. I do not recommend sitting it on a nice wooden table. It will probably make rings because they're coming out boiling hot. So a Formica counter, a granite counter, anything like that is fine, but don't sit it straight on the counter. You've got to buffer between the coolness. If you've ever gone to your counter and put your hand on it, especially if it's a granite countertop, it's cold. It's cold. So you want to put that towel down as a buffer so that your jars don't crack. Why get to this point with the work that you've put into it only to have them crack because you sat it down on a cold counter? Don't do that. Always use a folded towel. You can fold it more than half, so you've got 2 layers if you think you need it. If you're on a granite counter, put down, one towel and then another folded one or something. That's fine. You want your jars to sit up properly, not leaning over, but you also want them to be buffered from your countertop, because even the Formica, the lovely Harvest Gold Formica countertop I have, will get cool. And if you just sat a hot jar down on it, it could crack. If there were a fault in it anywhere, it probably would. Now, as I said, I have never had issues with jars that were not specifically mason jars, ball jars, Kerr jars, golden harvest jars. I've not had an issue with those, even if it had no label on it whatsoever. If the ring fits on it, I will try it. If I lose 1 jar out of 8 or 9, I'm usually not totally upset about it. But if you want to, save those for water bath canning, like doing tomatoes or something, or fruit. Perfectly fine to do that. That's not a high pressure. It's not as high a temperature because it's just boiling water. And you don't have the pressure that you do with the pressure canning. The pressure canning has to expel all of the air. Air is what ruins food. So hopefully this is going to keep going. We're at 1 hour and 8 minutes. It's starting. Let me get you back over here so you can hear it. Can you hear that? It's starting to jiggle. Okay, it's kind of spinning a little bit. Sometimes it'll do that. And I've got it on high heat right now. And the reason was to get it up to this point, and then I can slowly turn it down to readjust a little bit at a time. It's on like 8.5 is the number on my Whirlpool stovetop. Okay, you can see it jiggling. You can see it rocking. And that the steam noise and that rocking noise is what you want to hear. Okay, so we're going to start turning it down. Let's go down to 7. We want it to keep that rocking, but we don't want it to go crazy on us. And we don't want it to do this all the time. Just intermittently. A time or 2 a minute. Okay. It's got a lot in there. We're going to go down to 6. Now, I'm only telling you the numbers. This is what my stove does here in Colorado. Every stove is different. If you have a gas stove, count yourself lucky. It's much easier to look at that flame and adjust it. If it doesn't rock enough, you can turn the heat back up, increments at a time. You don't want to slam it into something. But you can turn that heat back up to get it back to where it needed to be. Okay. I'm at 6, which is where I usually leave it, between 5 and 6. Let's go to 5. It does take it a few minutes to, just a little time to pull back down because it's boiling inside there. Okay, and if you look, on the back side of that lid is a little black rubber plug. If the pressure got too high, that plug's going to be the one that blows. They are replaceable. And that will let out any steam that needs to be let out so the whole thing doesn't try to blow off. So that's your safety valve. That's what makes it so safe. But this pot is boiling hot. So you don't put your hands on it unless it's on the handles or this little thing there along the black part, which is like a hard plastic kind of stuff. Don't touch the metal, it's hot. You will burn yourself. Okay. And you see how it rocks, and you see how it jiggles. And every pot is a little different. Every stove is a little different. I'm going to go down to 4.5. I think. Usually I have it on about 5. It may not have it. Oh, see, now it's slowing down a whole lot. I think I'm going to go back to 5. Okay, I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to leave this on 5. If I lower it again, no, I think that's too much. Let's go down to 4.5. You want it rocking, but you don't want it putting out a lot of steam. I know this is kind of boring to watch. It's really rocking. It's dancing. It's happy. I wish I had that much energy. Okay. Okay, let's try 4. Ideally, you want it to rock and the steam to come out a couple times a minute. I tend to let it do it a little more often than that, just to be sure, because I'm still learning how this stove does with things. But if you turn it down and it doesn't rock at least twice a minute, incrementally turn your heat back up, because you don't want it to lose a lot of pressure. If it goes down a little bit, it just increase that heat a little tiny bit. And you'll just have to play with it to see how your stove does. It's not a huge thing. It's just you don't want all of your water to come out and steam, and then you open your canner and it's bone dry. That's not good for the canner. Okay? So this is about right, because it's still rocking. There's still some steam coming out, but not a whole lot. But if you hear that, that's what you want to be able to hear. You want to hear that there's steam making it rock, making it jiggle. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this video off while it processes, because I've got to time it. Now that it's doing properly, I got to go 50 minutes. And this timer does an hour, so 50 minutes, we're good. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this video off, and I will be back when that part is done to show you the rest of it, because it's going to be like an hour, and I know you don't want to sit here and watch it. We're at an hour and 15 minutes already. You're more than welcome to skip through parts, but I can't stop it and edit it. I'm sorry. I just don't have the option right now. So, everybody have a great day, and I'll be back a little later this afternoon with the balance of this. Y'all be safe now, and have a good afternoon, and I'll see you a little later.